A select group of Congress members are going to be briefed at the White House today, we are told, after multiple reports since last Thursday night that Russia offered bounties to Taliban militants to kill U.S. troops in Afghanistan. The Washington Post and the New York Times now reporting that U.S. intelligence believes the bounties offered to Taliban militants may have resulted, in fact, in the deaths of several U.S. service members, and that an interagency group met on this at the White House back in March. A spokesman for the National Security Council telling NBC News the veracity of the underlying allegations continues to be evaluated. That's not dismissing them. But no officials are denying that they are assessing the intelligence. The New York Times first reported the existence of those bounties Thursday night. The intelligence on them had been included in the presidential daily briefing book, according to the Times. President Trump denies ever learning of the bounties before this weekend, tweeting, "Nobody briefed me or told me." Overnight, he tweeted, "Intel just reported to me that they did not find this info credible and therefore did not report it to me or to the vice president. Possibly another fabricated Russia hoax," he tweeted. Well, over the weekend, top Republicans in the House and Senate raised the issue on Twitter, demanding briefings. And there are also reports that the British were briefed, who also have forces in Afghanistan. Russia has flatly denied it. Joining me now, former CIA Director John Brennan, former U.S. Ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul, and Democratic Congressman Max Rose, who served as an active duty officer in Afghanistan, earning a Bronze Star and Purple Heart. First to you, John Brennan. This is not only confusing and disturbing, but you have the NSC confirming that they are assessing, saying that it is not a final assessment, reports that it was in the presidential daily brief. Why did the president not know about it? And why, having worked in the NSC, why would they not have briefed him on this as it was being assessed? Isn't this important enough, given our relationship with Russia and the fact that he is advocating for Putin to be readmitted to the G7? To have told him about it?
Well, Andrea, I think the facts are still a bit murky at this point, but I think it is clear that there was some intelligence that was gathered earlier this year indicating that the Russians were providing some type of support to those Taliban elements to carry out attacks. Now, the role of the intelligence community was to assess the credibility of those reports and to seek corroboration. And if they were corroborated, if they were deemed credible, it would need to be brought to the highest levels of the U.S. government, up to and including Mr. Trump. Certainly the National Security Advisor needed to be apprised of this. So it's not surprising to me that the Russians are trying to stymie U.S. policy objectives in Afghanistan. And don't forget, it was in February when the U.S. initiated a process with the Taliban whereby the Taliban would not carry out any attacks against U.S. soldiers if there was going to be a U.S. withdrawal of forces from Afghanistan. So were the Russians doing this to undercut and undermine the U.S. initiative? Very possibly. But I still think that it's important to get to the actual facts, and I'm glad that Congress is looking into this right now.
Well, the Congress is looking into it, but the Congress has not been briefed at any level, and we don't know of any Democrats from intelligence committees that are being invited, not the Speaker, not Senator Warner, not, of course, not Congressman Schiff, being invited to the White House. Max Rose, let me ask you, your reaction. You served in Afghanistan. We know the Russians are bad actors, and the Russian intelligence, the military arm, the GRU, may well have been doing this. But for the U.S. to not take it more seriously, and for the president not to have read this intelligence, does it raise questions, on your radar?
Well, it raises questions, and I find it, quite frankly, disgusting and reprehensible. Look, it wasn't too long ago that I was an infantry platoon leader in Afghanistan, and I can tell you this, it's hard enough. Our soldiers have to deal with enough to say nothing of Russian bounties. But there's a larger issue here, and that is when our soldiers sign up for the military, we also make a pledge to them that we are going to be there for them, that we're not going to play politics with national security. And right now it appears that either this president ignored this intelligence, his administration ignored it, and now my colleagues across the aisle and those also running for office, many of them refuse to criticize this administration. I had no problem standing up when this president killed Qasem Soleimani and saying he did the right thing. It is possible to rise above the partisan fray, But again, and look, that they're not involving Democrats in this meeting today. Again, they are making this into a hyper-partisan issue, calling it a hoax. And our soldiers, our young men and women are still out there. That's what's so disgusting about this.
And let me play something that John Bolton said. Of course, he's got his new book, and he was on with Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, and Chuck asked him about it. And this was John Bolton's reaction as a former national security advisor.
When you say briefed, does that mean he's never been told of anything about it? We don't know the quality of the intelligence or the extent of it. If it does go back to March, that raises other questions. And the key point is, if there's any accuracy to it, if the Russians have actually been paying to see Americans killed, that is a very, very serious matter. And so, Mike McFaul, obviously Vladimir Putin has a great interest in interfering with U.S. policy around the world, and Afghanistan would be a chief place, especially as the peace agreement and a potential U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan was being considered. But would this have been done on the ground level by the GRU without Putin's knowledge? What is your assessment of that?
Well, it's possible, but I think it's highly unlikely. Whenever you're taking an action like this, and if the intelligence is true, I just want to underscore how outrageous this is. We need to get better fidelity on the intelligence, but nobody has brought up any claims to the contrary. That's what's been reported. And I'd just like to remind all your viewers, remember what it takes for somebody from the intelligence community to leak this information. That's against the law. And that they have chosen to do it, I think, underscores that they thought there was gravity here. I don't believe, Putin always denies that he doesn't know anything. He didn't know about the 2016 interventions in our elections either, right? He didn't know about the assassination attempt of Mr. Skripal in 2018 in the United Kingdom. I don't believe that. What I do believe is that it's empowering to him when we don't push back on these belligerent, egregious behaviors. And the President of the United States has never once pushed back on Vladimir Putin.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.